So I'm very honored to introduce Dr. Fleischman. Dr. Paul R. Fleischman graduated from the University of Chicago, the Albert Einstein College of Medicine, and trained in psychiatry at Yale University, where he also served as chief resident. He was in the private practice of psychiatry for over 30 years, consulted to hospitals, medical books, clinics, and was psychotherapy supervisor and seminar leader in psychiatry and religion in the Department of Psychiatry at Yale. He is the author of articles in professional journals and popular literature, and the author of numerous books, including Cultivating Inner Peace and Karma and Chaos. The American Psychiatric Association honored Dr. Fleischman for his unique contribution to the spiritual and humanistic aspects of psychiatry and medicine. Paul and Susan Fleischman took their first Vipassana meditation course under the personal guidance of Mr. S. N. Goenka in India in 1974. In 1998, Mr. Goenka appointed them Vipassana teachers in his lineage with the responsibility of explaining the meditation to academic and professional audiences. Dr. Fleischman has lectured widely around the world and in the United States, emphasizing both meditation's historical and cultural links to India, and also how it can be understood through psychology, biology, and social sciences. His books, articles, and podcasts are collected and available at Pariyatti.org. Thank you, Dr. Fleischman, for being with us.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. I'm talking to a tiny green light on top of a big screen, and I have to my lower right some notes that I'll be looking at to be sure that I say everything I want to say. I hope that by looking at this little green light, I can convey a living communication to those of you who I cannot see. I understand there's about 400 people, so hello to all of you. Special thanks I owe to Aruna, who you just heard introduce Vipassana. She's been very helpful to me in organizing many talks at Yale over many years. I'm going to talk about meditation and emphasize a feature that I consider uniquely powerful within meditation, and that is developing self-knowledge that anchors you in a feeling of stability accompanied by flexibility. Most of us today live in a world with an intrusive and insistent sense of trying to manipulate us into believing and doing things that are other than we would have chosen by ourselves. The intensity of our new internet culture is that we're on a screen receiving influences almost all day, almost every day for most people, whether you're students or workers. That's a new experience for human beings who often in the past might be working in a relatively more solitary, relatively more private way. So our ability to maintain the feeling of integrity, the feeling of authenticity, the feeling of following our own hearts is a little bit harder in this modern world. There was a cartoon in the New Yorker just a few weeks ago while I was thinking about what I was going to say today by the famous New Yorker cartoonist Roz Chast. She has a wild-haired woman who we typically take to be Roz Chast herself, who is trying to feel better about life. And these are some of the things this cartoon character tried. Therapy on and off for decades, yoga exercises, diet, meds, life coaches, banjo, plants, vitamins, Zumba, and ceramics. None of them worked. So today I'm going to suggest to this cartoon character that meditation has a specific impact upon self-knowledge, stability, and flexibility. As Danielle reminded you when I started this talk, I'm not promoting meditation as a medical treatment or as a cure for anything. I'm describing meditation, not promoting it, and I'm describing it from a full spectrum personality impact, not a tailored treatment. It's kind of ironic that yesterday, many of you may have seen, as I just saw on the NPR website, a study reported by NPR that said that a specific kind of meditation was shown in an 8-week clinical trial to be as effective as a specific kind of medication in reducing anxiety by 20%. Both the meditation and the medication reduced anxiety equally. I'm not referring to that kind of use of meditation as a treatment. I'm referring to meditation as a way of life, the facilitator of a lifestyle, a way of joining into certain human historical patterns, and a certain way of using our nervous systems and our social systems to optimize our well-being. That's very different than a tailored treatment, which I will not be addressing. Meditation should make us self-aware people. There's a paradox in meditation that will go to the heart of what I have to say today. And the heart of that paradox is meditation is an inward, psychological, self-reflective practice. It seems on the surface to be something that draws you away from engagement with the world. But most people who meditate find that its impact is the opposite. It increases your social engagement with the world. So it has at least a dual action from the very beginning. One part of the action is interiority, and the other part of the action is exteriority. When I say that meditation is uniquely geared for our modern times, our internet culture, I'm not at all implying that we should withdraw from the internet, withdraw from webinars, withdraw from the culture that now is, and for the nearby future, seems to be the dominant way that all human beings on the planet will communicate. And in fact, we live in this remarkable cusp, worldwide planetary communication available to almost all of us. What I am saying is that given the intrusiveness, the demandingness, and the mental power of the internet for influencing us and possibly influencing us in ways we're unaware of and we would not wish for if we were aware of, in light of that feature of the internet, meditation provides a perfectly suited counterweight, a counterbalance, not a withdrawal from, not an antipathy to, but a way of balancing out the impacts of the internet by meditating. A metaphor that has come to me that's helpful for me to understand what meditation is the metaphor of meditation capturing the fractile dimension of our nervous system. A fractal, as many of you must know, is a self-similar pattern that keeps reproducing itself over and over. That's self-similar, while at the same time, it also elaborates variation. Fractals, when they're pictorial, repeat the same nucleus image over and over, yet at the same time produce wide-ranging, highly variable, and if they're colored, multicolored screens of visual cascades of imagery, constancy and variation. Variation that returns to constancy, and constancy that facilitates variation. That's where the idea of meditation as both stabilizing and making you more flexible comes from, the image of a fractal. Now, if we look at meditation, we'll see right away that it's a pretty simple-minded kind of activity on the surface. When you meditate, you sit down, you close your eyes. And in the case of Vipassana meditation, which is the kind I practice, the attention is turned inward to one's own body sensations. And the attention is highly repetitive, inward going towards one's own body sensations. I'll say a little more about the actual practice of Vipassana in a minute, but the point I'm making now is it seems quite monotonic, quite simple-minded, quite repetitive. And yet everybody who meditates, who works hard to experience this focusing, concentrating, simplifying, organizing, repetitive component of meditation, also experiences paradoxically the opposite, a wild elaboration of mental context, an awareness of oneself and one's mental life far beyond what one has experienced before, a deep, reflective, interior journey into the vast bibliography of one's own mental contents. So meditation is stabilizing, repetitive, simple, focused, and it is elaborative, suggestive, creative, and leads to a higher degree of familiarity with oneself. Another image for meditation, along with the fractal image, is that meditation is somewhat like the hunter's mind. The hunter's mind is a phrase used by some human biologists to suggest that since human evolution, our species of humanity is about 150,000 years old, maybe 200,000 years old. And for all but, say, 10,000 years of it, we've been hunter-gatherers. Agriculture is only at maximum 10,000 years old. And so our minds are geared to be hunter-gatherer minds. We are evolved to be acting like hunters, thinking like hunters. And the hunter's mind may be a part of us. The hunter's mind uses concentration, focus, heightened awareness, and connectedness to other living beings. One way of understanding meditation is that we've rotated the hunter's mind. We retain the components of concentration, awareness, and connectedness to other beings while we eliminate the actual activity of hunting. But while we're tapping in to our biological, evolutionary matrix, we feel optimized. We feel we're living as we should be and as we're made to be. Whether we're looking at meditation as a reorientation of our fundamental biology, or whether we're looking at meditation as a discovery of a fractal property of the human nervous system, it's striking to think about, where did this activity come from? Meditation, as we understand it and know it today, is derived from ancient India. It's the product of a very specific cultural era and cultural location in which priority was given to interior search for spiritual practices that produced harmony and peace within oneself and with others. There is not exactly a religious component because meditation is based upon an effort made by a person. It is not an appeal to a higher power, and it is not dependent upon belief in a higher power. Yet there is also a religious component in the sense of appealing to ultimate values, to one's highest sense of purpose, to one's tapping into what one feels one's life is about. So when we think about meditation, we want to give respect and admiration to the inventors or the people who perceived certain qualities of the human mind and how we can use them. For thousands of years, meditation spread through Asia and found local expressions, particularly in the Far Eastern countries like China, Korea, and Japan. And wherever meditation went, it was always accompanied by certain core values. And those core values are self-reflection, appreciation of harmony, and a moral way of life. The moral way of life was codified in ancient India by what was called the Panchashila, the 5 forms of moral practice: not to kill sentient beings, not to take what is not freely given, not to become intoxicated, not to use false speech, and not to commit sexual misconduct, meaning only yes means yes. Those 5 precepts were the basis of meditation in ancient India and remain the basis of Vipassana meditation, which I continue to practice along with millions of other people today. One of the boundary lines in meditation where it is both religious and not religious can be seen in its lawful properties. As I said, meditation has no connection to belief in particular rituals, particular constructions of the world, or particular higher powers. In that ways, it's not religious. But meditation does have this call to a higher life, a better life, a wholesome life, a wise life. And this call brings us in line with the psychological laws that are embedded in our persons, that are reflections of some of the laws of the universe. Einstein referred to this quality of understanding the world as scientific, and he said, it puts us into an understanding where we see that the universe must be meaningful because there is lawfulness and order contained within it. The core value upon which meditation rests should be emphasized as a value. That is, although meditation is scientific to the degree that it bases itself upon properties of the nervous system that reflect properties of biology, that reflect properties of the living universe, meditation is not merely scientific or just scientific. It is not exactly part of the scientific process because it is based upon an explicit appeal to a value system. The value system can be best understood by a short phrase: non-harmfulness. Those 5 moral vows that I described are intended to focus the person's life upon non-harmfulness. And meditation is the process by which a person can advance in non-harmfulness. Now, non-harmfulness was described in ancient India in the following way. Do what helps others. Don't do what harms others. But for the modern person, that's kind of unsatisfying. We know that there are complex ramifications in the social systems we belong to. We know that sometimes taking what appears to be a good action can have long-term, complex, possibly unintended negative ramifications. We know that refraining from certain kinds of actions can appear moral and high-grounded, but actually refraining from action sometimes can lead to complicity, allowing something we don't want to happen because we've refrained from intervening. So I don't want to get off onto an ethical topic. I want to talk about meditation. But what I want to say is that meditation is not a neutral practice simply to tune up our nervous systems. It's a values-laden practice to tune up our nervous systems around the values of non-harmfulness, and defining what they are becomes an important conscious task of every serious lifelong meditator. That is, to keep asking the question, in the context of my life right now, what is the way of being non-harmful? I've referred to the nervous system, and certainly meditation occurs partly within our nervous system. When people meditate, if they're hooked up to modern imaging gear in a scientific laboratory, different parts of the brain will light up. And these tend to be relatively constant. One thing meditation does is intensify concentration. Another thing is heighten awareness. Another thing is it tends to reduce certain kinds of toxic internal stimulation. That is to say, it helps us feel better about ourselves. All of those phenomena have to occur in our nervous system, or they wouldn't be happening to us at all. And so understanding that meditation is partly a neurobiological process is a very important insight that every meditator will take comfort in. We're using our most highly specialized biological body part when we meditate, and we're doing something with it that seems to make us feel good, social, and well. But as I just said before, I referred to neurology. Meditation is also cultural. That is, it's social psychological. It does not occur within one brain. And when one person meditates alone, they're nevertheless using a psychological, developmental, educational tool that has been invented by other people and that has been passed down through a culture. So meditation is also a receipt, something we've gained from others, a teaching, a learning, and a process that involves much more than an individual person tuning up their nervous system. So there are those two very important components, the neurological individual and the social psychological cultural. One way of defining meditation, I have a statement that says, now you can see that meditation, as I have described it, is an anciently originated Indian cultural product. It's a derived value system coupled to a neuropsychological practice. It flourishes in the context of human groups, and it augments certain kinds of awareness. Let's go back and look specifically at the awareness feature of meditation, which is often considered its most defining feature. A very simple description of Vipassana meditation would be as follows. You sit down, try to calm yourself, still yourself a bit. You close your eyes and you try to become aware of all the sensations in your entire body. Of course, there's an extensive teaching on how to do this, and one sentence does not capture education in an entire process. But we can see right away the salient features of meditation from that very simple description. One is looking inside, and one is using one's nervous system, one's mind, to contact one's body. It is a psychosomatic, integrative process of heightened and intensified, constantly renewed focus and awareness upon one's bodily self. But that bodily self is always connected to the mental self. And so as one turns inward, one finds one's mental life floridly dancing in front of your own eyes. We can now see that meditation is biological, psychological, and the goal of meditation is to see this dance of physical sensations, which accompanies a dance of mental thoughts, ideas, wishes, dreams, fears, hopes, daydreams, and to see it all in a benign, holding environment. One holds all of this within oneself in, hopefully, a non-agitated way. And the way to arrive at that mental state is through a certain kind of meditative consciousness, which is called non-judgmental, non-editing, not trying to get rid of anything, not trying to get rid of body sensations that you don't like, not trying to get rid of thoughts you don't like, but also not trying to relish body sensations you like, not trying to favor thoughts you like. Meditation becomes an evenly hovering, holding way of relating to oneself free of judgment, agitation, or tension. It can be called the cultivation of inner peace, self-harmony, getting along with oneself, being aware of and at ease with all of oneself. As you meditate, certain things become inescapably obvious. The first thing is both body and mind are remarkably transient. They're changing every second. In fact, they're changing every millisecond. As soon as you feel sensations on your body, they alter. As soon as you think thoughts, they begin to flow. As soon as you have daydreams, memories, wishes, and fears, they constantly transmogrify. One of the essential lessons, learning experiences, and necessities of the meditative life is accepting change as a fundamental feature of the universe. Of course, this insight perfectly fits with our modern scientific worldview, which sees the entire universe composed of smaller things compounded into larger things. We have electrons and protons and atoms and molecules and cells all within our body, all are constantly changing. We have constant energy relationships that hold atoms together into molecules through electromagnetism that is constantly changing. Our body is constantly changing. Our mind is constantly changing. And a lot of the times we're uncomfortable with that. We want things we can hold on to that are stable, safe, and secure. So when I introduced what I think is most salient for our modern times about meditation, one thing is stabilizing, simple, fractal-like practice, using our familiar old territory of the hunter's mind turned to non-harmful ways of living. But the opposite feature of meditation is also very predominant. It's learning to live with change, more change, more change, more change. Therefore, meditation is also a learning process in flexibility, acceptance, letting go of hyper control, going with the flow of the reality of the universe as science has described it to us. Meditation brings us close to the experience of the universe the way that the Buddha describes it in his discoveries about meditation and the universe, which is the realization of the incessant microscopic substrate of all reality, upon which our sense of self is an overlay, an artifice. Meditation brings you close to that same scientific worldview. But at the same time, as I keep describing in this pattern of dialectical opposites, meditation is quite earthy. It brings you close to your daily experiences. You'll find yourself not necessarily sticking with the meditation goals of being aware of sensations and not judging them. And you'll find your mind going off into thinking, worrying, and planning about the immediate concerns of your daily life. And predominant among those are going to be interpersonal relationships. Meditation makes you so aware of how your own personal harmony is based upon the way that you interact with other people. We're social animals. We inherit culture. We inherit meditation. And we're social animals who are always in a matrix of a human I-thou communion, a human contact with other people who we are receiving from and to whom we are giving. The texture of our interpersonal relationships becomes one of the most vividly examined, deeply experienced, and well lit up components of the meditative experience. If you want to feel inner peace, you have to feel some degree of harmony and well-being with the people around you. If you want to feel inner peace, it will be an essential component of your practice to also feel feelings of loving kindness to other people, feelings of compassion to other people. Meditation lights up our minds and our sense of self as if a light were shining on a mirror and we were being seen in the mirror. Much of what we see in that mirror is highly guiding. It leads us towards what makes us feel best, our highest values, that is, peace, harmony, self-acceptance, better relationships with people, more harmony with others, more compassion for others, more loving kindness for others. But meditation also reveals that generally we live far from our own ideals. Almost all of us, unless one of the 400 of you listening to this talk today is the Buddha, almost all of us have things about ourselves that are quite at odds with the ideals we espouse as we enter the meditative realm. We find that we get angry. We find that we get sad. We find that we put ourselves in front of other people as more important than other people. Daniel Kahneman, the great 20th and 21st century psychologist, said, "The most important thing that modern psychology has taught us about human nature is that we all think we know more than we actually know." This self-importance, this grandiosity is present in all of us. And it's another thing we see when we meditate. So meditation is also a teacher, a learning matrix, a growth facilitating process. Although the meditative mind accepts itself without judgment, the meditating person is stimulated to grow in a direction, to change. Change is inevitable, and the change facilitated by meditation is a change in the directions of the 5 moral vows: compassion for others, harmony with oneself, harmony with others, cultivating inner peace that becomes social peace. However, not everyone likes meditation. Anyone who's talking about meditation who doesn't tell you that some people won't like it isn't giving you the full picture. Some people don't prosper in meditation. They don't like seeing themselves, or they've had very difficult experiences that makes meditation too lonely and difficult to pursue. Or they're more restless, motoric kind of people who really don't want to be still. There are many good reasons why a person might not choose to meditate. And if meditation doesn't appeal to you, or if your earliest experiences are not favorable, it's a perfectly reasonable thing for a person to not meditate, and to not pursue it. We shouldn't be promoting meditation as a cure-all. Another thing that meditation does not do is provide a substitute for medical care or psychological care. It may well be a very helpful way of living in the world, but when people suffer from extreme states of mind or diseased bodies, they should be seeking proper professional care. Another thing that meditation doesn't do is it doesn't cure every social ill. I remember giving a talk and some young man asked me, "Will meditation help stop climate change?" Frequently, people want to know, will meditation bring social justice, income equality? Will meditation stop nuclear weapon proliferation? The answer is meditation is not a substitute for everything else. It occurs within the context of a complete human life and a complete human personality. Meditation is not to avoid the other components of life, but to enrich them with its most salient quality, and that is the quality of equanimity. If you're moved to climate activism, social justice activism, income equality activism, anti-nuclear activism, meditation will not take you away from those processes, but hopefully it will give you the equanimity that can mean the courage, the determination to pursue those things because they keep lighting up in you as you meditate as what's important to you. There's a famous phrase in modern Western theology coined by the theologian Paul Tillich, who said, "Every human being is motivated by an ultimate concern." For many people, meditation is the way to see, to keep seeing, to feel, to keep feeling. We are on the path of what our meditation tells us is our greatest ultimate concern. For many people, right from the start, meditation feels as if we're doing what we were intended to do. We're using our minds and bodies as they were intended to be used. Even people who feel that way can often find meditation difficult. Meditation is best practiced in the supportive context that it was originated. Groups of people who meditate together, who share a teaching together, and who share their experiences together. My own meditation has been guided since 1974 by the teaching of Mr. S.N. Goenka, who taught Vipassana meditation in 10-day courses. In 1974, Susan and I took one of those courses. We're still using the same technique, the same tools. Remember, I described how meditation is so much like a simple formula, one simple mathematical set of notations that are self-similar. They keep repeating. So since 1974, I have been self-repeating the simple process of awareness of body sensations, the mental life that goes with them, trying to cultivate that awareness with equanimity and with an understanding of the universal change. That's the fractal, that's the self-similar repeating core formula. And since 1974, I've lived a complex life engaged in multiple ways, including medicine, psychiatry, writing, lecturing, being a family person, etc. Both of those following the path that was laid out in 1974 by Mr. Goenka. One of the features I've emphasized is meditation in touch with many dimensions of the human personality. It may be in touch with basic neurophysiological fractal-like processes. It may be in touch with our original hunter's mind. It's in touch with our culture values. It's in touch with certain particular histories and parts of the world. It's in touch with our own psychological interior mental life, which is so rich and unending and unfailingly interesting and changing. It's in touch with our scientific mindedness that leads us to understand that change and compounding of minute things into larger aggregates with their eventual decay is the process of life. It's the process of our universe. It's the process of our galaxy. And yet at the same time, meditation puts us in contact with our very familial, interpersonal friendship feelings, our social and emotional limbic system relationships. The limbic system being that part of the human being which carries the emotional charge that we experience as we live in a social context. This all makes meditation quite different than when it's prescribed for a single one purpose goal in a short-term manner. I have found that I don't outgrow meditation, that it remains both interesting and useful. I've also found that its cultural context, its value system, becomes increasingly important to me as I continue to try to live a life that is not banal, boring, routine, uninspired. Every day, the meditator wakes up to an inspirational process. Every day, the meditator who meditates twice a day closes the day with an inspirational process. This process makes us feel good about ourselves and gets us close to that Einsteinian feeling that the world must be intrinsically meaningful because there is a certain law and order within it that is mirrored in the law and order that we feel in our minds and bodies as we meditate. I think I'll stop here, Danielle, and if there are 400 people signed up for this talk, then the percent of questions that we'll be able to answer will indeed be very small, but we'll try to answer a few questions. So
this is a question from somebody who is a Vipassana meditator. I know that ideally when we practice Vipassana, we should sit for an hour. Is it better to sit for less time when you can't sit for an hour, or skip sitting altogether because you can't sit for a full hour?
very good question. The short answer is, if you have a minute, sit for a minute. The guidance to sit for 2 hours, 1 hour twice a day, is part of the teaching of Goenkaji's teachers and of Goenkaji himself. I have practiced it very assiduously through my life and found it to be an excellent guidance. It puts you on the path in a strong way, a determined way, a hard way, but a way that really keeps you anchored and rooted. So when we're looking at the stability part of meditation, that advice is the best advice you can get. But it's not always possible for everybody, and it's not even always doable for everybody. Somebody maybe just had a baby. Somebody may have an extremely hard job. Somebody may have very sick parents. Somebody may be very sick. So not meditating because you can't meditate for an hour does not make sense. The meaning of the hour is strong determination as a way of life. If you have that strong determination and all you have is 1 minute, sit for that 1 minute. When your life changes, and it will change, then maybe that 2 hours will come back into your life.
What should we do with toxic people surrounding ourselves, including family? I want to be compassionate, but I feel I'm not strong enough to face them and that it can be damaging for me.
That's a really excellent and honest question. It's too facile to say that we can always be compassionate. So when I was talking about the ideals of the meditator's life, the non-harmful life, the life of moral vows, the life of self-insight, I kept saying they're ideals. And then I described, when we look at ourselves in meditation, we always see that we're not capable of being the Buddha. We can't live up to those ideals all the time. So there are 2 mistakes that you can make when you're trying to live with very difficult, toxic people. One mistake is to give up trying. The way we grow is to try to do something that we can't yet do. But another mistake is to try to do something that's impossible for you, that will only harm you and harm the people around you as you flail about not very effectively. So I would suggest going in both directions, and that's one of the themes I hope that stood out in this talk. You want to keep trying to exercise that compassion. If you don't exercise it, it won't grow. And you don't want to try to be a UN negotiator at a nuclear arms conference when you're just an ordinary average person. So there are times that we need to step away from toxic people, definitely. On the other hand, if you completely give up, where is your path going to lead you?
I am a Vipassana meditator and have been meditating for 2 years. I have been struggling with the monkey minds, which are massive and very active. Do you have any suggestion?
Sure. There are a few things that are in common for almost everybody. If you did an interview with all people who've been meditating for 2 years, you would find 100% are complaining about their monkey mind. So one thing is, 2 years is a good long time, but hopefully the goal of meditation is to meditate for the rest of your life. Just like we hope to speak for the rest of our life, we hope to exercise for the rest of our life, we hope to read for the rest of our life. We're not advocating meditation as an 8-week program. We're advocating meditation as a tool that enters into our lives and becomes as intrinsic to who we are as our speech, our reading, our exercise, etc. So 2 years is not a long time. Relax, keep trying, keep giving yourself time to grow. That's one thing. Another thing, recognize that everyone else has that exact same monkey mind problem. It frequently happens that when people are more than average troubled by a monkey mind, a re-examination of the 5 basic vows can be helpful. I'm not preaching a moral uptightness or a moral fastidiousness that makes people obsessive with tiny details of morality. But when you examine yourself as you're working in a meditative life, and your goal is to live that high quality, good to yourself, good to other people life, one of the ways you can see problems that you're generating for yourself is to look into those moral vows and re-examine yourself. How well am I doing with those? A certain percent of the monkey mind is diminished as a person gains strength in living the ethical lifestyle. But I don't want to make you feel that if you're having a monkey mind, that means you're not living ethically, because let's go back to the first principles. Everyone has it. It takes time. Give yourself a lifetime goal. Have a little sense of humor about your monkey mind. And finally, you might want to check out what time of day, how you're meditating, when you're meditating, and how that influences the monkey mind. Is it when you're too agitated by other things like work and you really can't meditate? You should be concentrating at work. Is it at a time when you're just too exhausted? It's too late at night. All you can do is daydream. You can't muster the concentration that meditation requires. So tinkering with the time of day and the location may also be helpful. Most important thing is it's a human process. Monkey mind is a human process. You're learning to reduce it. Give yourself time.
I used to be very ambitious in career and academics. After practicing Vipassana, I'm more content in my present life and less into achievements. My family thinks it's inaction and that I'm being passive, which had made me question myself at times. Am I misinterpreting the meditation practice?
Possibly. When we say ambition, you're probably referring to the kind of ambition that I also had as a young adult, to get the right basis for living a life in this society, for using my talents, for not putting me in situations where I didn't have the talents. That is, for sculpting a life that fit me, that I could feel good about and live comfortably for many, many decades. That ambition is very important, and it helps us live a good life. As I said towards the end of the talk, we don't want to advocate meditation as a substitute or a way of diminishing the other important components of life. But there's another meaning for the word ambition, and I'm wondering if this would apply to your question. And that is, as I said, meditation makes you inspired every day. Every day is a learning experience. Every day is a effortful concern to live the good life, to live the meditative life, to meditate twice a day. And that's a kind of ambition. Maybe as meditators, we don't like using the word ambition. So we'd say it's an inspiration, or it's a meditative goal, or it's an idealized way of life that we hope to follow. But that also is ambitious. It's a way of working to improve yourself. It's a way of working to help the people around you. If your meditation is making you into a high quality human being who feels better about him or herself and who is helping the people around them, that's a proper ambition. If your meditation is in fact making you passive, a word that you used, and it's not inspiring you to be active in a compassionate way of life, I do think that's a misguided use of meditation. And I think you might want to re-attend some educational formats that help you recontextualize your meditation in the service-oriented way of life that meditation goes along with.
Another question. Could you please elaborate about the sexual life and meditation? Please clarify the vow in this context.
Great. That's one of the big cultural transitions that meditation went through. For many, many years, we could say thousands of years, most of the Asian countries where meditation was practiced tended to limit meditation to monastics, male as well as female. That tradition had a very pragmatic base. Up until quite recently, it was very difficult for people who had a regular sex life to regulate pregnancy. Contraception was either totally non-available or only marginally effective. If a couple has regular sexual relationships over the course of a typical length of time, let's say from age 20 or 30 to age 40 or 50, decades, that sex life in a natural setting in most historical cultures will produce a large number of children, a large number of pregnancies. And pregnancy and childbirth were dangerous. They even are slightly dangerous today. So the life of the average person over most of human history and culture was filled with many children, large families, economic difficulties, and difficulties procuring all that is needed to be safe and well as a human being. Those lives were not very conducive to meditation, and that explains the traditional ideal that if you're married and have many children, your job is to take care of your family, male or female. But today, things have changed remarkably. For married couples who are heterosexual and who have the chance of producing pregnancy, it's very simple to choose pregnancy. It's very simple to not choose pregnancy. For people who aren't necessarily heterosexual and whose sexual life doesn't involve such dramatic, life-altering processes, it's very easy to continue a sexual life and be a meditator. So in the current context, our understanding of the sexual life of meditators is as follows. If you're constantly changing partners, if you're constantly agitating yourself, if you're constantly making grief-filled exits from previously intimate relationships, how are you possibly going to cultivate peace, joy, and harmony? Peace with yourself, harmony with others. The first step has to be an intimate relationship that is good for both people involved and that both people are fulfilling themselves and the other person without anybody being misunderstood. Only yes means yes. A second feature of sex life has to be that it's not simply a game or a toy that leads you away from the other high values that accompany meditation. But for most people, most of the time, the most stabilizing ground for a meditative life is a long-term, intimate, sustained, loving, ongoing relationship that includes sex as well as all the other components of love, friendship, and partnership.
Maybe one more question, Paul. Wouldn't you concur that the practice of metta does help spread compassion, love, and justice in our society?
Yeah, I would definitely concur. I hope I've been saying that all along. But of course, just sitting and spreading metta needs to be transformed into the actions of our lives. So whether we're doctors or teachers or activists or parents at home with small children, The metta has to come out in social action as well as merely in felt experience. But the origin of the best social action is the felt experience of metta. So yes, I very much agree.
So I think that will conclude the Q&A. Sorry if we couldn't answer your question. There were many wonderful questions in the Q&A. Thank you all for your time and your attention and for a wonderful lecture, Dr. Fleischman. I'm going to pull up a last closing slide to share with the audience with a little bit of information regarding Vipassana for anybody who would like it. And thank you all for being here today, for your wonderful questions, for your attention. And thank you again, Dr. Fleischman, for providing this fascinating talk and sharing your time with the group. Thank you, Dr. Poashe, and thank you, Susan Fleischman, for monitoring the Q&A and doing that part of the program for us.